you need to have profit, obviously, and along with that, you need to have cash flow. Those are the two basics, right? And I'll go back from that in a second. But I think if you don't have those two pieces, scaling is going to be really difficult. You're very quickly going to need to either inject more money yourself or bring on, debt in some way to finance scaling. So if you don't have that cash flow, if you don't have that profit, it's not going to work. You have to have, there are two sides of the same coin, right? The profit has to come through, and then you still need to be able to have cash flow building up your cash in your accounts after you're taking distributions, paying taxes, paying loans, any of that stuff. But I think really, like, to have positive profit and to have positive cash flow, the metrics you need to look at are what percentage of revenue is being spent on your operating expenses, what percentage of revenue is being spent on your team. We would call that your cost of goods percentage, right? Basically, like, what's being spent on the team to do the service, and really getting a feel for where that is and how those influence profit margin, right? So, like, for therapy practices specifically, which are different from some other private practices, right? Like, if we're looking at like a speech practice or physical therapy practice, like, the numbers will look a little bit different from this. But for therapy practice, just to give an example, we would want total therapist pay, so benefits, taxes, wages, to be less than 60%. Ideally, more like 55%, maybe even 50%. But for most practices, 55 is a decent goal. We would want operating expenses to be 20 to 25%. And this is of revenue. So if you have $100,000 in revenue, you want to be spending $20,000 to $25,000 on operating expenses, and $60,000 or less on cost of service, which would be therapists. So I think getting a good feel on those metrics before you scale can be helpful to feel like, all right, is our pay structure even set up for success? Where if we add on 10 more providers, is it still going to work, or is it only working right now because myself as the owner I'm doing a ton of sessions or something like that, So I think when you're thinking about scaling, you want to make sure that those bones of the practice are in a good place, the structure is in a good place, that the pay structures are set up to continue to provide profitability, not just, maybe they're in a fluke right now. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll run some numbers, do a little bit of forecasting to say, all right, if we're hitting profitability numbers right now, if we add on 5 more providers, can we still hit those? Like, will the numbers still work? So I think it doesn't need to be a super complicated spreadsheet or anything like that, but I think you do want to run some numbers to make sure that especially those pay structures will still make sense. The operating expenses too, but I mean, operating expenses to me are easier to fix than pay structures. Pay structures are the most difficult piece to change, because again, once you offer benefits or raises or something to your team, taking that back is going to be really difficult, and you're going to have turnover, right? So before you take that jump into scaling, I would make sure I was really confident that my pay structures would keep making sense and would continue to be profitable. And then from that point, operating expenses, some of the other things I think can get worked out down the road if they need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there's often times with, and as you know, I work with seven figure, multi seven figure, higher revenue, where there's more of like, oh, you've hired all of these people and the pay structure is off, or you've
Mm-hmm.
overextended yourself, or they now get a cut. Like, so even from the therapy practice, like the split fee, I hate split fee. Everyone who knows, like, I absolutely hate it. But it's like, how do you fix that? And it becomes more of a complicated conversation because you have to go back, rework a contract. Usually people don't want to make less money. If they make less money, they're going, even if they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm cool with this, they're out looking for another job, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very complicated. And so oftentimes when we do start working with clients, when they're that far in the game, then we're having to scale back. And there's some clients where they've been able to even get to multi six, and we have to scale back. And so they go through turnover, then they're stressed out because of the turnover. And then we're trying to give them fresh start. So let's hire the new provider who doesn't know that you used to pay
Right.
this amount of money so you
Right.
can fix the mistakes, and then trying to even just maintain the practice from going out of business. So it's very complicated. So I want everyone who just heard what Nate said to think about what you're doing for the providers today, and is that scalable for the future for compensation model? Because if not, then when you fast forward a couple years, you're going to be mad. You're not going to be able to necessarily be able to pay yourself the amount of money that you want to pay yourself and all the things too. So that's
Right.
the gem. Like, if no one else gets anything else out of what you just said, I think that it's a gem, because I live it in real time every day with some of the
Mm-hmm.
clients. And it's just like, oh, I know you're said, I know, but it's almost fixing some missteps that are okay. Like we've been able to fix them and things like that. But it's still very stressful. And when you're at the
Yeah.
beginning stages and you're only hiring your first one or two providers, it's so much easier to, do something different as you're scaling. So please listen.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's the number one problem that we work with clients on, right? Is, man, we are paying a lot to our therapists. How do we fix this? And like you said, oftentimes you have to break it down before you can build it back up. We had a practice where she was small starting out, but she had five therapists. Realized that her pay structure was way too high, and she transitioned, lost all of them, and started back with just herself, and then is rebuilding it up. But she was dedicated to that. She's like, I know I got to do it. It's going to be painful, but I'm going to go through it now. And that's a whole lot easier with five therapists than the practices that we see that have 60 and they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's so many more obligations at that point. You're so much more known in the community. So the earlier you can do it, the better. But it is truly a painful and tough process to go through, which doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do sometimes. But yeah, again, like you said, the earlier you can do it, the better. Run those simple numbers. Make sure you can scale based on those pay structures, and it'll save you a lot of heartbreak down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.